Hi, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about how we use technology in our homeschool. And so if you like this kind of content or other homeschool content, please remember to subscribe and let's get into it. Okay, so this video is an open collaboration video with Abby from Rooted in Rest and Jessica from the Waldock Way. So there'll be a playlist linked down below of other homeschool moms here on YouTube commenting on how they use technology in their homeschool. And so that might be helpful for you to check out. So I'll make sure that's linked down below. And then before we get into how we specifically use technology, I wanted to give my overall idea of technology use in general. And this kind of is what motivates me in homeschool and how we choose our technology use in homeschool. So I try to be more of a minimalist when it comes to using technology. I'm not like anti-tech or anything like that, but I also don't want it just to be all around us all the time, like screens in our face all the time. I've mentioned before on a video, I can't even remember which one, we don't have any TVs. My kids still watch shows just on a little tablet, but we just never have had a TV. And now that we still don't have one, we probably never will. And it's just been really nice for us. So we don't have TVs, and I try to minimize a lot of other screen use. I don't have like an Alexa or a Siri or, you know, all those little things that sit around your house and you talk to them. My kids would drive me crazy if we did. We don't have those kinds of things. I just don't really like them. I like to be able to have just a home that's full of us and not all the world coming into our home through the use of technology. So with that kind of perspective, let's talk about how we use technology in our homeschool space. Okay, so I have my list right here. I'm gonna kind of go through it. I'm like, is it organized? I don't know. It's sort of organized in my head, but I don't know if it's all gonna be organized on paper. And so I first wanna start off with saying my kids do get some screen time in the day that is not part of homeschool. And I wanna start with this because other things will kind of apply to this as I go through them. So usually in the afternoon from like 2 to 4, my kids can watch shows. And we just have this little tablet. My kids think TV is just like that. We do have a projector, but we only pull it out for like special occasions and stuff like that. So most of the time they're just watching TV on this little tablet. It's very cute and sad at the same time. But it's something they look forward to, which is kind of sad, you know, but that's really the only like screen time they get for the most part throughout the day. And it's the time that I can get stuff done. And so we've done quiet time, and they still have some quiet time, usually from like 1 to 2. We get some reading in and try to do some quiet time during that time. But it's still, they're still fighting, there's still interruptions. So honestly, it's just easier if they're watching a show, because then I can either do stuff around the house, I can get some work done, I can edit some videos, I can do some reading. And right now those 2 hours aren't always mine because we have a 1-year-old, and sometimes he will take a good nap during that time and other times he doesn't. So half of that time I'm usually taking care of him. But the time is intended for me to have, it's like my break, because, you know, I'm with the kids all day long with homeschool, and I need some time that I can have a break and breathe and just get some things done. So that's what they do, and they're just watching TV shows. They watch old like Disney shows that I used to watch when I was like a teenager and that I still watched into my 20s. My husband makes fun of me. So that's kind of their time throughout the day to have their shows, and sometimes it gets interrupted and then they don't get it, and that's totally fine. Or they'll choose to play outside, either in the snow or when it's warmer, they'll choose to play outside. And I'm totally fine with that. It's not like I'm like, go watch your shows, go watch your shows. So anyways, that's the start. I just wanted to start with that because some other things will kind of fall into that or affect that. Okay, so for specifically homeschool type stuff, we use screens a little bit, mostly just for some learning. I try to find curriculum that doesn't involve too much screens. I know there's a lot where like the math lessons or whatever will be online, and I don't really love that. I feel like hands-on learning is just so much better, and me and my husband know math pretty well too, so that is something that's fairly easy for us to teach. So the good and the beautiful for some of the like little bit older elementary grades, they have video lessons, and they're only like 8 to 10 minutes, which I actually really like. So they can sit down, my older kids can sit down, watch their video lesson, and it also has the lesson in the book. So if you don't want them watching the lesson, they could just read it in the book or have a parent explain it a little bit better. But they watch that lesson. Again, it's so short. I really, really appreciate that it's very short and concise. And then they can do the lesson, the rest by themselves without using a screen. So that's one of the things we do. Another thing that, excuse me, we use screens for is our Spanish, and my son has been doing like Japanese lessons. And so we use screens for those types of things. And I don't mind using screens for those because it's an interactive type thing. So, you know, they're asked questions, they're discussing things, they're learning their Spanish, they're learning their Japanese and all that kind of stuff. And I think I still have a link for the Homeschool Spanish Academy, so I'll link that down below. I think you can have a free lesson if you want to check it out. But that's one of the things I like. My kids really wanted to do Prodigy, which is an online math game. And so I was like torn about, you have to, you know, pay for it, which the charter school we're a part of will pay for it for us. But I also didn't want to add more screen time to their afternoon screen time. So this is where the afternoon time is important. So I discussed it with my husband. I'm like, they really want to do this, but what are we supposed to do? Because I don't want them to have like 3 hours straight, you know, in front of screens or whatever. And so if they want to play the game, they play it during that time, not for the whole 2 hours. They get usually an hour of time, and they can choose to either have their like TV shows, or they can choose to play the math game for that time. And they each are assigned a day of the week. So we're not like all fighting or anything like that. And that has worked really well. And they've always wanted to play. They're highly motivated by it. They don't complain about not watching their TV shows and all that kind of stuff. So it's worked really well for us. My kindergartner doesn't play Prodigy. So she does a few other like online learning games. Sometimes she does Teach Your Monster to Read. We have an old Leapfrog tablet that my oldest son, who is 11, got when he was like 1. My mom gave it to him, and he was too little to play with it at the time, but we still have it and they still play with it. So sometimes she plays on that. And then she also does some Osmo. And I really like Osmo just because it is an interactive thing. Again, I like it if I don't mind using tech as much if it's more interactive. And so she'll, you know, have something hands-on that she's doing. When she was learning her ABCs, you know, she's physically building the ABCs like down in front of her while the screen is showing her kind of what to do. And then she has one that's like Elsa, and she's drawing or coloring pictures, but she's drawing the pictures like in person with her hands, not like on the screen. And so I really appreciate that kind of learning, like tying in the real world, the real physical world with something on a screen. And then I think the last thing we really use screens for is our charter that we were part of, My Tech High, which I mentioned this in my best like homeschool finds of 2022. So I'll link that video down below. But my kids, 2 of them use screens for their technology classes they're a part of, because it's a robotics class and an animation class. And again, they're watching videos or programming like for the robotics class, but they're doing stuff in real life with their hands. And I just think that's so much more meaningful. It keeps them connected to the real world and what they're doing instead of becoming lost in this fantasy world. And I just really like that kind of learning when it comes to using technology in our homeschool. Okay, the last thing I wanted to mention about technology use in our homeschool is we don't have phones, like my kids don't have cell phones, just me and my husband do. And we don't use like Gab watches or Gab phones either. I am opposed to them having those things when they're super young. I'd rather push it off as long as possible. And I know a lot of those things, obviously, you are not allowing them access to a lot of online things, right? Especially with the watch, it's just a way to stay connected with them. But really, my kids don't go many places without us. And if they are, it's mostly just at church things, which is pretty close to where we live. And honestly, like me and my husband survived being children with no connections to anything, you know, not having a phone, our mom not knowing where we were. You know, most of the time we got in big trouble if my mom didn't know where we were. So especially once it was dark, like big trouble. So we were highly motivated to let her know where we were after it was dark. And so I think setting boundaries helps with those types of things. You know, letting kids, like my kids have run off before and gone places that they didn't ask. And so they have to come home and they don't get to go to those places. And we talk about it and we're like, you have to let us know where you're going. And I feel like that is actually teaching them something. It's teaching them how to be responsible, how to be aware of what's going on, that they can't just go and do whatever they want to do and just forget that mom and dad are going to wonder where they are, and that it might not be safe, like everything might not be safe for them just to go and do. And so we haven't had anything super crazy. My kids don't participate in any like sports individually, you know, in the school system or anything like that, where we're just like having to drop them off and wonder about them. So maybe eventually we'll be at that point, I'm not really sure. But right now we don't use any of those types of devices, and I really don't like them, to be honest. I'd prefer not using them. And I think my kids do well, and they're very responsible, and they always come and ask like, oh, can I do this? Or can I do this? When it's nicer outside, and they're outside a lot. Right now, we are getting buried under so much snow, which is really good for us in the drought, but it's a lot. It's a lot of snow. It snows all the time. And so they will come and they'll let us know. And I'm just grateful for that. Like that they're being responsible and they're learning those things, which if I was just pinging them on a watch all the time, they wouldn't learn those things. They just roam the neighborhood and be like, I can do whatever I want. And I don't want them to be like that. I want them to be responsible. They can still have fun and be responsible. So that's one of the reasons we don't have those things. I just am kind of opposed to having them, especially at the moment, and trying to put off like cell phones and all that kind of stuff for as long as possible. Just quickly, one other thing that I forgot to mention as I look through my list is that we use these speakers, and I haven't taken the time yet to figure out, I think they can link together, but I haven't figured that one out yet. But I haven't charged these since I got them like months ago, and they still are holding the charge, so I'm impressed. But my kids get excited, like we use these for stories, like the recorded stories for the good and the beautiful history and different things like that. We'll connect my phone to these, and then they can, you know, it's just a little bit louder and it's just fun for them. They think it's fun. Or, you know, sometimes if we want to just dance around and listen to music and have it louder than it is on my phone. And I didn't want to buy a super expensive speaker. That's why I got these. And I feel like so far they've been really good, and we use them a little bit. We don't use them a ton, but again, I need to figure out how to link them, because then that would be for like an epic dance party. So we'll have to figure that one out so we can totally be jamming over here. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed listening to how we use technology in our homeschool space. And let me know down in the comments below some of the ways you like to use technology, maybe things that have worked for you, things that haven't worked for you. And remember to give this video a thumbs up. Check that playlist down below for other homeschool mom tips. And I will see you next time.